Segment 3. 1,000-year trial, last 10 years. So the attacks of 9/11 take place. The United States responds. Let me ask you in this segment to evaluate how we've done in this last decade. Iraq. We still have about 50,000 troops in Iraq. Until a few weeks ago, President Obama wanted them all home by the end of this year. Now they say they may leave 10,000. But essentially, it's over. Has Iraq been a success?
Well, you're asking someone who has so much bet on Iraq. I mean, it's like the jury is biased in this case. I think we have done well in Iraq. It was expensive. It was costly. It was bloody. It created a schism in our country, if you will, between those who favored the war and those who opposed the war. And it created another kind of schism. Many who favored the war in 2003 and 2004 became critical of the war later. And they grew, if you will, virulent because the revisionism was very passionate. It was very passionate. So I think we've done well in Iraq. We are going to leave in Iraq a fairly decent polity. And even someone like former Defense Secretary Bob Gates, no friend of the Iraq war, the other day he said, you know, Iraq is a big success. I mean, it was a big concession for him. He had been part of the Iraq study group, which was very critical of the Iraq war. And he said something, he said, the Iraqi army is not in the street shooting at his people, as is the Syrian army, as is other armies in the region, as is the army in Libya. I think we will have a very decent outcome in Iraq.
You'll agree?
I agree. The Iraq military operation had to be done. It was justified. It was a long time in coming. The international legal foundation for it had been built up going all the way back to 1990-91 in the first war against Saddam Hussein. We went into it in the proper way. We ran into enormous trouble. It was near catastrophic between 2003, 2006. President Bush, even with the midterm election disaster on his hands, called for the surge. The surge succeeded. The major result here has been the demonstration of a new kind of polity. So you have something in Iraq that tells the whole region that we, Arabs, Muslims, others, do not have to be fated to live under a dictatorship. And you could see that message getting carried, I believe, into Lebanon in the Cedar Revolution, where
Which was what year again, Charlie?
That's 2005.
2005, right.
With Lebanese politicians saying, and one of them openly, that I hate to say it, but we wouldn't be doing this if it had not been that the Americans overthrew Saddam Hussein. But that Cedar Revolution, like other color so-called revolutions, was crushed. But it was the first of the Arab Spring. The Arab Spring didn't start in January. It started with the Cedar Revolution.
I want to come to the Arab Spring, but first, so Fouad, having succeeded in Iraq, it's only a matter of 6, 7, 8 months until we succeed in Afghanistan, wouldn't you say?
No, I wouldn't say. Unfortunately, having been a hawk on the Iraq war, I have this sinking feeling that in Afghanistan it's a very different kind of endeavor. And I have, not to offend my friend and someone I truly admire, General Petraeus, who was my patron and my host many times in Iraq. When I went there, I decided I wouldn't say much about Afghanistan. I'm not a fan of the Afghan war. I'm not a fan of Hamid Karzai. I'm not sure that we will leave in Afghanistan the kind of presence and the kind of results and the kind of success, the lasting success that we will have left in Iraq. I think these are two very different theaters of war.
If I may attempt a translation from the elaborate courtesy with which you were raised and of which you're such a lovely exponent today, what you're saying is this thing is a stinker and we should get out.
I don't know. I fear that. I fear that. I mean, I fear that.
Charlie, you said that the great success in Iraq is that it shows people in the Arab world that they don't have to live under dictators. Afghanistan was never a dictatorship. It was all broken up into tribes and regions. It was quite a loose-jointed country to the extent that it was a country at all. What are we trying to fix? It's not a question of the difficulty of putting it back together.
What we're doing there is, in fact, it's a grand strategy that American administrations have been following almost unconsciously for a long time, and that is to try to shore up world order by helping, leading, prodding, places states to be more responsive to their people. And Afghanistan is, as you describe, something that's far below the standard of Iraq when we went into Iraq. I think we've done reasonably well in Afghanistan. I think that we left it alone for the middle of the first decade of the century, and that's where it really went wrong. But to me, what I see is both a military success and the start of a nation-building success too. And the difference there is that the tribes, the Afghan tribes, are one thing, and the Taliban is another thing. And I think we sometimes tend to think that the Taliban are the Afghan tribes.
Right.
Where it's a kind of an umbrella attempt to unite and control the Afghan tribes. I think we have begun the process of something that can turn out to be a reasonably effective central government that leaves the tribes to themselves, but will not allow the Taliban to take over the country.
Okay, we have begun the process, you just said. If we were British, we'd have a feel for the process because we would have spent a century and a half longer than that in India, 3 centuries, understanding how you go in and run a colony and then back away, having built a nation out of disparate little bits and pieces, back away and let them turn into a modern country. There is none of that in the American tradition. We ran the Philippines for a while, and it was a contentious, difficult issue every year we were there in the Philippines, and finally we said, out! And having begun the process, the position of the administration, we have 100,000 troops there now. The administration plans to bring home 10,000 this year, another 23,000 the next year, and the official line is still all home by 2015, and even that doesn't have support in the public, according to all the polls. We can't do it, Charlie. We've begun it, but we can't see it through.
What you described is the problem. We can do it. We know how to do it. We have, in case after case, starting with Vietnam in 1970, 71, 72, 73, begun to make progress, but then politically we are not allowed to do it by our political system. Doesn't mean we can't do it, but it means that we undercut our own victories. It's snatching defeat out of the jaws of victory. Now, what we're doing at the moment with the Obama administration and the president's decisions, he has taken strategic decisions that I think are sound, but then he has tactically taken decisions that undercut his own direction. So all of you have pointed up all of the departure dates, and that's the problem. The one thing you don't want to do in a situation like this is saying we're going to surge in Afghanistan as we did in Iraq. Oh, by the way, we're going to start coming out in July of 2011. That completely gives the other side the message correctly. Just wait them out.
To make the program feasible here at home is to make it untenable in Afghanistan.
I think that the intelligentsia of our country are exaggerating the question of Afghanistan. I do not see.
It's not that hard.
It's not that hard, but I don't see in my role in the university, I don't see any anti-war movement. I don't see people who are consumed with worry and angst and anger about what we're doing now in Iraq or what we're doing now in Afghanistan.